Hey, y'all, welcome back to another episode of the Red Zone Rodeo podcast. I am your co host, Carson, and I'm here with Rob today. And first and foremost, welcome back. Football season is upon us. The NFL is back. Tomorrow, when we're recording this, will be the first ever game of the season, week one. Big game, big opener. I'm super excited. I'm sure you all are. I know Rob is, and we're just happy to be back to spend some more time just talking football with you all and building this community bigger and better and greater than it's ever been before. So thanks for coming on back, and we're excited to have you. First off, with some big news in regards to the podcast, we're going to be continuing doing stuff here on YouTube, but also what I'll be dropping in the link, I'll be dropping this link into the bottom into the comments section. But we have also started a new Spotify podcast. So if you don't have the time necessarily to stop and watch our videos on YouTube, maybe you want to tune in and on your drive to work or something like that. Well, we're going to have that option available for you for this upcoming season. So we're going to get launched into that so you can listen to us, bring us along, and make sure that you're never out of the community, always here with us. And so we're going to make that available, and I'll be dropping that link down below for you all to check out. But other than that, well, Rob, welcome back. Are we excited or what?
Yeah, Carson, man, I tell you what, it feels so good to be back. Making this show with you, getting to watch football again. It's been the longest off season I can remember, and I'm not just saying that because the Cowboys did not have the best off season of all the NFL teams. Man, I missed football. I missed making this show, and I am just beyond happy and excited that we get to do all that again.
Absolutely. Ever since the UFL ended and, there's been those months in between, and yes, there's training camp and all that stuff, but you only have so much that you can get out of training camp. And on top of that, then you have the preseason game, super fun to watch. But now it's the real deal. Now it's not like it doesn't matter if you win or lose. Great to always see prospective players coming on up, especially the young ones, and seeing what they can all do and benefit your roster moving forward, making the 53 man cut. But now we're getting into the real deal, the meat and potatoes of it all. Week one is right around the corner, and I am certainly super stoked for it. But first off, we gotta cover some of our bases. And we're going to be talking about the Titans and Cowboys. And so my question for you, Rob, before this season starts is, what are your hopes for this Cowboys season? And what are some of your fears heading into week one?
Well, I think one of my biggest hopes and simultaneously one of my biggest fears is that the Cowboys will sign Dak Prescott to a contract extension, before the season starts. Maybe that'll happen by the time this video releases tomorrow, because the Cowboys really have to get this deal done before the season kicks off. Dak Prescott, in recent media comments, said that if the deal's not done before the season starts, that really says a lot about how the Cowboys feel about him, and he's right. Um, if he starts the season without a deal, he has no incentive to sign with the Cowboys. He has every incentive to hit open free agency and become the highest paid player in NFL history by a significant margin, probably hitting 60, 65 million a year from whatever team decides to pay him. So hopefully in the next 24, 48 hours here, the Dallas Cowboys pay Dak Prescott, because if they don't, man, I've been watching Trey Lance at those preseason games, and I've been watching Cooper Rush. I do not like what is going to happen to my team if Dak Prescott is not the quarterback. That is probably my biggest fear for this season. Also, in terms of hopes and fears, obviously, I think we're going to win the Super Bowl this year. That's my hope. Uh, I don't see how it can't happen. We got Dak and CD and Micah. It's our year, so that's also a hope that's in there. But honestly, I'd say it's more like I know it at this point. We are going to win the Super Bowl. So
And you have Zeke back. You forgot about Zeke. He's back for
yeah,
another year. He had his little hiatus in New England, and now he's back. I've heard how much you've loved having him over Tony Pollard.
oh yeah, I just am so thrilled that Mr. 30-year-old or 29-year-old Ezekiel Elliott is back in Dallas. He's not fast, okay, he's not quick, and maybe he's not youthful anymore, but he's still Ezekiel Elliott at the end of the day. Maybe he won't be the best running back, maybe he won't get a lot of yards, but that's still Ezekiel Elliott at the end of the oh my goodness, for real though, I cannot believe the Cowboys brought him back. He's a good locker room presence, but I really hope he doesn't get a majority of the snaps. I'm thinking Rico Dowdle will probably get most of the snaps at running back. Um, he's been pretty good when he's been on the field, but he's had trouble staying healthy. So hopefully Zeke doesn't have to touch the ball too much. He's just kind of there cheering on from the sidelines. But you know, uh, we'll see what happens. So, um, how about you, Carson? What are you looking forward to, hoping for this season from the Titans, and what are you afraid about?
Yeah, it's I'm really I have a lot of hope going into this season because, the Titans team and roster and even how it's going to be playing moving forward is completely different than a Titans team we've seen in the past number of years. This isn't going to be the ground and pound Derrick Henry, Mike Vrabel kind of teams. This is going to be something completely different in which the passing game I think is going to be exploited a lot more. And so I'm super hopeful to see, what this will turn into and turning and really kind of turning over a new leaf and really playing to the skill set of a lot of the players on the roster. I really have hopes that Will Levis can make that jump year two. And if he can, he has a bunch of weapons around him. And I think those will only help him grow as a player too. And that's going to be good to see. My fears for the season, however, are well, Brian Callahan this is his first year as a head coach. And as much praises as he's had as an offensive coordinator, especially in regards to getting Joe Burrow the step he needed to take for the Bengals back in a couple years ago, like I have hope that he can certainly do the same with Will Levis, do the same with this team. But this is really going to be kind of his first season game in which he will be kind of responsible for most of the calls, most of the shots that's being done. And so hopefully there's not too like bad or of a learning curve. But I think that's one of my fears, as well as with, a lot of the players on the Titans roster are a little bit older. They are superstars in terms of players. DeAndre Hopkins has been said that he's could play week one now. He came back to practice actually today, I believe, if not yesterday. So he's at least getting reps in the building. Calvin Ridley, I know I always say the joke. He says he's 25, so he has to be 25, even though he's like 28 or 29. But that's always a concern I have too. These players, sometimes the older you get, the more fragile you are on the field, and sometimes one hit goes the wrong way, and maybe you don't bounce back as quick as some of the younger guys. And so that's always a fear going forward. But I think the Titans, they have the right pieces together, so they can certainly have a good season. It's going to be a tough road. It's not going to be easy, but they can absolutely make a splash and surprise bunch of people, I think.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think they definitely have some good pieces on that team, but I think one of the concerns you highlighted is the age of all the players on that team. I mean, you've already seen DeAndre Hopkins get hurt before the season even starts. Who knows? Once the season really gets rolling, what types of injuries a lot of these older players are going to be sustaining. I mean, I'm trying to think of like a lot of great young players the Titans have, and there's just not a lot of them coming to mind. I know your new offensive lineman that you drafted, Tavondre Sweat, the defensive tackle. All the rookies that you have this year are pretty good. Traylon Burks, I guess, is pretty young still. But it seems like a lot of your core pieces, DeAndre Hopkins, Calvin Ridley, Chidobe Awuzie, they're just older guys. Your safeties, right? Didn't you sign a couple older safeties this offseason?
Yep. Yep.
So
Both from the
what happened?
Seahawks.
Yeah.
Jamal
What
Adams and Andre Diggs.
That's right. Uh, so if they weren't good enough for the Seahawks, maybe it's a little concerning that they're going to be the Titans guys this year. Um, so I just kind of want to see what the durability is like, and also how many of them have kind of lost their luster or ability with age. So that would be my biggest fear if I was a Titans fan for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head even with the Cowboys too, because Dak Prescott and getting that contract done is certainly a big deal, especially when it comes to the future of your team. And there was all of that concern pretty much all off season in regards to getting any contracts done. CD Lamb took forever, and the Cowboys paid really the price for that. Like, and countless other players too. Like, the next thing you have got to worry about is Micah Parsons coming up with his contract. Is it going to be the same? And I think that's certainly a big worry, and hopefully, the people in the right places and have the right power can be able to bring that all together, maybe a little bit more efficiently than some of these past contracts have been done. But I mean, well, I guess we'll certainly see. I think that's either a plus or a fear, at the same time.
Well, I can confidently tell you that will not happen because since Jerry Jones has taken over the Cowboys, especially over the past decade, getting contracts done with big players has been virtually impossible early. I'm not sure what it is about the Cowboys, but they are like the worst team in the league at getting those big deals done on time or ahead of time, even like the Broncos did with Patrick Surtain today. You
Yeah.
know, he's from the same draft class as Micah Parsons, and he's already signed an extension. And it feels like the Cowboys haven't even like considered negotiating with Micah Parsons yet. Uh, there was an article that came out over the summer that said something about like there being 30 different levels of bureaucracy in the Cowboys, and that's why they can never get a deal done with anyone on time because they can never agree what they want to offer them. And if that's really what's happening, because Jerry Jones' leadership kind of makes things chaotic, then that's something that's going to continue until there's like a major change in the leadership structure, which I don't think there will be for a long time. So this kind of like edge of your seat, waiting to the last second to get contract extensions done. That's just a part of the Cowboys culture that's not going to change anytime soon. So hopefully that gets done sooner than later. But who knows what's going to happen? Same thing with Micah. Hopefully he gets done sooner than later, but I really doubt it.
Yeah. Certainly some worries heading into this season for sure.
Yeah, no, it's not great, but all three of them, Dak, CD, and Micah, are in the building right now. They're getting ready to play this whole season together. And as long as we have those three guys on the team, at least for this year, I think that gives us a chance to compete. So,
Yeah. I mean, they were certainly talented players, and them being on the field is better than them not being on the field. So we'll see how far the Cowboys go this year. I know that you think they're going all the way. I have some doubts in regards to it, but we'll certainly see, and we'll get to that later when it comes to the later part of this episode tonight. But we're going to move on, and since this is really pre-week one, we didn't really think that it would be pertinent to try to put out a pre-week one power rankings or something that we would want to throw out there for you. And so something we're going to do instead tonight is we're going to break down in a way and give you our predictions for each team and each division, each conference. And so we're going to go division by division. And I'm going to give you my analysis on who I think is going to be, first, second, third, and fourth. Rob's going to do the same. And it's going to be fun because by the end of the season, we'll come back and we'll check in and see what we all said and see how many of us got them right and how many of us got them wrong. It'll be a fun little exercise. And obviously, let us know what your thoughts are in the comment section below. Love to hear from you guys. It's community. That's what we're building here. A community of like-minded individuals. And so not only are we going to give you ours, we'd love to hear yours as well. But we're going to start off right away with the AFC conference, and we're going to begin right with the East. And so, Rob, how do you think the East is going to shake up this year? What are your predictions for those teams?
man, Carson, I got to tell you something. I am really riding the Dolphins bandwagon this year. I've just been looking at their roster, man. I know they lost a lot of good defensive players. I know they didn't do the best job replacing them. But the more I think about Tua getting better, having more time with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, who both just got paid, that new explosive rookie running back they have, Jalen Wright behind Devon Achane and Raheem Mostert. That's like the best three-man running back rotation in all of football right there, if you ask me. I have a lot of confidence in this team. I know Tua hasn't really shown anything yet to kind of earn that confidence. I can't really tell you why I have so much confidence in Tua, But if he takes a step forward and he plays like a top 10 quarterback with those weapons around him, I don't really see a team that the Dolphins can't beat, especially in the AFC East, which I feel like is significantly weaker this year than it's been in a long time. So I'm going to have them at number one. Very close to number two, definitely the New York Jets. You know, they got a loaded roster top to bottom. The real question is, can Aaron Rodgers stay healthy behind that new revamped offensive line now featuring Cowboys legend Tyrone Smith at left tackle? I think they can for most of the season, but I still think he's going to miss some games, which is why I have them at number two. Then I have the Bills at number three. You know, they lost Stephon Diggs. They kind of rebuilt that wide receiver room. There's not really a alpha receiver there anymore. I still think Josh Allen can, make some stuff happen. But overall, I see that as a less talented roster right now than it was over the past 5 years or whatever. And then the Patriots definitely at number four, just because their quarterback situation with Jacoby Brissett might not be the best. Uh, and they don't really have a ton of talent around him either. So if Drake May comes in and starts balling out, maybe they'll move up. But for right now, it's hard for me to put them at any spot except for number four.
Yeah, honestly, for the most part, I would 100% agree with what you just said. I think that's how I would put it too. I as much as that Dolphins bandwagon is, I do think out of these four teams, they are clearly the best roster wise, both sides of the ball, even. And I think that's going to carry them a long way. And honestly, you still have some of those superstar players that having them in your lineup, having them on your roster, they're already going to basically set your team apart from others and make key plays that, teams that don't have superstars like them, they won't be able to do that every single time. And the Dolphins having Tyreek Hill, I mean, what a player, first off, in terms of the wide receiver room, in terms of all that they have going for him, but a guy that always constantly gets open, super fast, hard to take down, very, very diligent when it comes to his work ethic on the field. And so I would absolutely kind of put those teams the same way you did. I think Dolphins have the best team in the East. Next would be the Jets, and then the Bills, and then the Patriots, just based on talent wise alone, and from what I'm seeing going in. Yeah.
I'm going to say one thing that I know you'll disagree with because I know you don't like this guy very much. But I think if you took Josh Allen from the Bills and you put him on the Dolphins, they would win a Super Bowl every year. No one's stopping that. Josh Allen to Tyreek and Jalen Waddle. I mean, come on.
I would agree. Josh Allen is a better quarterback, I think, than Tua is. Just the results he's been able to get. Don't like the attitude, but sometimes it's those attitudes though that really drive the fan base forward. And I know so many Bills fans that are crazy about him. So maybe it's the same kind of thing with Will Levis and his mayo for me. Most people probably find that so weird, but that's like a badge of honor I wear. I'm like, yes, that's my man. So probably the same thing, but
I mean, those personalities, they drive, interest. Like the same way Prime, that's the reason he was so famous because he was so, outgoing and cocky all the time. Uh, so then next, I think we have the AFC North. Oh man, Carson, that's a really tough one. That is really tough.
yeah.
How are you stacking these teams?
This is as you mentioned, this is tough because honestly, I could see three, if not four, of these teams making the playoffs. For this year, these rosters are stacked. Number one, I will put the Ravens. I think just hands down, they do have the better roster of the other three teams. Lamar Jackson has been able to show what he can do in the season. Now, granted, what he does in the playoffs is something completely different, but we're not talking about the playoffs. We're talking about the division outcomes for this season. I think the addition of Derrick Henry in the backfield is only going to push them even further into better contention and winning that division. Derrick Henry is an older player, but you can't write him off. We've seen what he's been able to do even last year with Tennessee, and that was with no offensive line. Now you're talking about a Ravens team that has a better offensive line than the Titans did last season. And on top of that, the wide receivers and the additions on defense that they've been able to make. I think just overall, I think the Ravens are that team that will be on the top of the division. Coming in number 2 in that spot, I'm believing in the Bengals. I think Joe Burrow is going to bring it back this year. The roster is talented, but I think it's going to be a close second and third race between them and the Browns. The biggest question I have with the Browns right now, though, and why they're at 3 for me, is really what version of Deshaun Watson are we going to see? We know the Browns defense was talented last year, and I think it will carry on into this year. The offensive pieces on that team, they're pretty good, but the problem was Deshaun Watson just couldn't get the job done. And so I think that's really going to be the big question. What Deshaun Watson are we going to see? Are we going to see the one we've seen the past number of games that's just kind of been mediocre to average? Or are we going to see the Watson that played for the Texans and was really able to make things get going? So that's why I have the Browns at 3, just because of that uncertainty. And the Steelers, people might hate me for saying this, but I think this is going to be the first ever Mike Tomlin losing season. So they're going to be at 4.
Wow. Okay, well, I disagree with you on 2 points. I think I have the Bengals winning and the Ravens coming in second because I just really believe in Joe Burrow. I really believe in Joe Shiesty with the new
Yeah.
blonde haircut and everything.
Ugly.
It's just I hate it too. But every year he's been healthy. I mean, he's just absolutely dominated. He's the only quarterback I can think of that's gone to the playoffs besides Tom Brady, of course, and beat Patrick Mahomes in a championship game. Him and Jamar Chase just have this special connection when they're both on the field and they're both healthy that just happens to win championships, right? I mean, they did it at LSU. They almost did it with the Bengals once. I feel like they'll definitely get a chance to do it again. When that team is clicked, they always start out so slow too. Like they are always the worst team in the league for like the first 5 weeks of the season, and then they just kick it into gear and just start destroying everyone in front of them. As long as Joe Burrow's healthy, I just that combo, if they're firing on all cylinders all year long, it's hard for me to imagine very many teams beating them or being capable of beating them. So I definitely have them number 1, but the Ravens are certainly a close second. They're, like you said, a super talented team all around. I agree with the Browns at number 3. Steelers at number 4, I also agree with, but I don't think they'll have a losing season. I think the AFC North will be so good. Their 4th place team will be at least 9-8. They are just a really talented roster. I know their quarterback situation is kind of iffy right now. Well, it's worse than iffy. Uh, but Russell Wilson, I feel like he was a little underrated last year. He had a really good QBR, really good touchdown to interception ratio, and that was playing in like a broken offense that didn't really suit him. So if Steelers coaches can kind of figure out how to use Russell Wilson still. Obviously, he's not prime Russell Wilson. I still think that's a team that's going to win a lot of football games, even if they're not going to, be better than 4th in their division or make the playoffs or anything like that. But yeah, otherwise, I completely agree with everything you said. So
The Steelers, I think, have a very difficult schedule this year. They have long stretches of their schedule that will be playing against some of the top teams in this league. And so, personally, I understand that their team, other than really the quarterback room, is solid, but it's a tough stretch, especially with quarterbacks that how can they handle those day-to-day, those week-to-week games where it's tough matchup after touch matchup? Sometimes quarterbacks break under that pressure. If Justin Fields is going to be leading this team, we know what happens with him under pressure sometimes. What happens with Russell Wilson? And that's really the question, is Russell Wilson going to be the guy that he was in Seattle? I don't think he is. I think he's gone out of his prime that way. So even despite him having a good QBR, playing in a terrible system with the Broncos, I just don't know if he has it still to lead that team through that hard road. And so I don't know. I guess we'll definitely see. But I'm calling it Tomlin's first losing season. It's going to happen this year.
say what, if Justin Fields ends up starting games, then I'll agree with you. I do not think Justin Fields is very good at all. So I think if Russell Wilson starts the majority of their games, they have the ability to have a winning record, but Justin Fields, no way. No way at all. So
It's that Ohio State product. It's just never good. Never good enough.
never ever.
All right, moving on to the South and the AFC. All right, Rob, how do you think these teams are going to stack up?
That's another tough one, and you're probably not going to like what I have to say, Carson. At number 1,
Blasphemy.
I know. You're going to be really not happy, but I have the Texans at number one. You know, they went to the playoffs last year. They looked really good. They've only gotten better. I'm not a huge fan of the Stephon Diggs trade. I don't really think he's that good anymore. But you know, outside of that, they've added some really good pieces on their defense. They added a good running back, although he's also kind of washed. The one from Cincinnati, I'm blanking on his name right now.
Joe
Uh,
Mixon.
yeah, Joe Mixon. DJ Stroud will be a year older, a year better. Hopefully he doesn't hit like a sophomore slump or whatever. I know that's like a common thing with quarterbacks sometimes. As long as that doesn't happen, this is a better team than they were last year, and they won the division last year. So I don't really see a reason why they wouldn't win it again this year. Number two, I have the Indianapolis Colts. I really like AR-15. The dual threat, the arm and the legs. If he can stay healthy this year, I feel like he's going to be, our course MVP candidate, even possibly. I can see him really doing a lot of amazing things through the air and on the ground. Granted, that's a lot of faith that he knows how to throw a football well when we haven't really seen him do that in college or the NFL. So inconsistently well at that. But I just have a lot of faith in him. And I know he has all the talent in the world, and I feel like the Colts coaches are going to be able to get that out of him. I feel like they're really good at all the other positions that matter, especially at wide receiver. I feel like they're stacked. Adonai Mitchell, one of my favorite draft prospects, they got him now. They got Josh Downs, who they drafted in the third round last year, and they got Michael Pittman Jr., who has really been coming into his own lately. I think this is Jonathan Taylor in the backfield. Great defense featuring Latu Latu and what's his name, Forrest Buckner in the defensive tackle spot. Great linebacker. Like this is just a really good roster, and especially if AR-15 does what I think everybody knows he's capable of. Could definitely see this team winning a lot of football games this year. Number three, I'm so sorry, Carson, but I have the Jacksonville Jaguars at the third spot in the AFC South. Um, I'm not the biggest Trevor Lawrence fan, but I've seen him play well at times. And the Jaguars have a lot of talent on that roster. Christian Kirk is one of the better, more underrated receivers in all of football. They have Josh Allen out there on the defensive line. This team has a lot of pieces, and if Trevor Lawrence can start playing like Prince of football or whatever he was back when he was at Clemson, or even like a little bit of that, I think this is a team that could be dangerous and win some football games. So I have them at number three. Then I'm very sorry, Carson, but here at number four, I got the Tennessee Titans, just because Will Levis hasn't really shown me enough yet to have a lot of faith in them. Their skill position players are really old for the most part. Traylon Burks is unproven, and he's probably the only young receiver they have right now. Really, the one shining spot of goodness, I'd say, on the Tennessee Titans is Tony Pollard. That's my guy. Watched him play for the Cowboys for a long time. I think he'll rebound from injury this year and probably be one of the better running backs in the league. So I think the Titans have that going for them. And I think their defensive interior is really good at T'Vondre Sweat and Jeffrey Simmons. But outside of that, I'm really, really, really suspect of that roster. So, yeah, sorry, Carson, number four.
Wow. So have to disagree with everything you just said. I'm kidding. That's not everything. A lot of it, but not everything. I would agree. I would definitely be putting the Texans up at number one too. I think just overall, just looking at the paper, of it all, the roster offensively and defensively, they just really have a lot of talented players at almost every single position. And I think the big question, and you mentioned it, is CJ Stroud going to have that sophomore slump? Is there now enough film on him and now a whole offseason to prepare for him? Is he going to be coming out as the same guy? If not, Davis Mills is behind him, backup quarterback. So legendary right there, I'm kidding. That's not true at all. But
Yeah, I was going to say he's not the quarterback from Texas I wanted to see get an extension today.
there you go. But yeah, I do think that the Texans, at least now, looking at it and putting our prediction on it, I definitely think that I would say the Texans are number one. Now I'm going to have my Titans at number two. Okay, shaking things up here. Number two. Now the reason I think the Titans are going to be there is well, one, the Jaguars are at the bottom of the division. They're going to be fourth. Colts are going to be three for me. Now, the reason why I think that the Titans are going to have a little bit of an edge over the Colts is just because Will Levis has shown in more games what he's capable of than AR. AR really kind of puts himself into situations that gets him hurt a lot more. That throwing accuracy is not really there yet. Will Levis, even though he played a number of games last season, there was a couple of them that he really shined. He really shined in, and not only was it just his throwing abilities, but his just awareness of the horrible offensive line that was there and what he was even able to accomplish with that. And so I think that he's an even better quarterback coming into year two than he was ever in year one. Learned a lot under what Callahan has been able to put out there for him, what Nick Holtz has been able to put forward with the offensive scheme. He obviously knows how to work with Calvin Ridley when they were both with the Jags last season. So I do think that there's going to be a lot of people who are surprised at how good this Titans roster can be on the offense and defensive side of the ball. I do understand the players are older, and that, as I mentioned even at the beginning of the show, it's one of the fears too. You know, how durable can they be? But I have full confidence in Calvin Ridley, full confidence in DeAndre Hopkins. You know, in terms of offensive weapons, leading receivers, and I think Traylon Burks is going to have a breakout season too. I think this is going to be his year to kind of come around. The Colts, they have a stacked roster, but if you don't have a quarterback that can really get that done and stay healthy, I think that's really could be the downfall of the Colts this year. And the Jaguars, there's just so much that's going on that just these past couple seasons, like, yes, Trevor Lawrence has like one or two or three or maybe four good games. And then the rest of them, you just never know which product you're going to get. And I would even argue the Jaguars team last year was better in terms of the talent than it is this upcoming season. Granted, there's been a lot of hype on Brian Thomas Jr. coming in that they drafted from LSU. He's been getting a lot of hype, so he could certainly become that Calvin Ridley replacement in a way, you know, as a talented receiver. I would agree with you, Rob. Christian Kirk is certainly a talented guy, a little under the radar. Not a huge fan of Gabe Davis, you know, and some of the other players that they have. And it didn't. So Josh Allen, isn't it Hines Allen? Didn't he change his last name to like Hines Allen to add? Was it Hines Allen that he added, or he
I
did?
didn't
He
know that.
added something. It might not even be Hines, but it was something because I think he was so upset that he was getting like Josh Allen. Like I don't know. You search your name in Google, who's going to come up first? Obviously, the quarterback of the Bills and not you. So maybe that's probably one of the reasons why I changed it. But I don't know. I think the Jaguars have a lot of problems going on down there in Florida, so they're number 4 for me.
Yeah, I'll definitely agree with some of what you said about weaknesses of teams like Trevor Lawrence's inconsistency, AR-15's kind of newness. About the Colts specifically, though, they were second place in that division last year, right? And they almost made the playoffs. If they had beat the Texans in that last game, they would have been in the playoffs instead of Houston, right? And that was without AR-15 at quarterback for much of the season. So I think they've proven that with the roster they have, they don't necessarily need good quarterback play to be around 500, right there on that brink of playoff contention. And I think with AR-15 this year, they'll probably get some inconsistency. You know, we both know he's not the most accurate guy in the world, but he kind of has that like wow factor. You know, he just makes things happen the same way like Mahomes does, or like Michael Vick did, or Lamar Jackson does. And I think with that wow factor at quarterback, even for some of the season, that should be enough to give the Colts like a respectable record this year. Although I fully agree with you that their quarterback position is still definitely like a complete unknown. I'll say this: if you had the Colts roster with Will Levis on the Titans, I would definitely have them at number 2 or number 1.
Oh yeah,
Um,
I
right
would agree.
yeah, having that wide receiver room, I think that'd be great for any young quarterback. And AR-15 is very lucky that that's what he's throwing to right now.
Yeah, and I think the big question too is, you know, AR-15's backup was Gardner Minshew. And say what you want about the guy, but you know, he's the starter in Las Vegas this year. And he was, you know, I know he keeps giving me a label as like, oh, he's just a good backup quarterback. He's competent enough to lead a really talented team around him to success. And that's what he did with the Colts last year. Um, I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but let's talk about the AFC West then, because Gardner Minshew and the Raiders are right there in it. So, Rob, what? Or maybe I should start. I'm going to start. You know what, Rob, you hold on. I'm going to go with it. Raiders number one. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. No, no, that's not going to happen. Sorry, Raiders fans and Gardner Minshew fans. Chiefs number one. I have done enough betting against Patrick Mahomes and that roster to realize that they just get the job done. And the Chiefs, as long as they have Patrick Mahomes, I don't. They last year they had an even worse roster than they do now, and they still were able to win the Super Bowl. So I think that the Chiefs are still going to be that team. They're still going to be the team to beat. And I think it's highly, foreseeable that they even three-peat. They could be the first team to do so. They have what it takes to be that team to do it, and I think they can with the roster that they have around him and Patrick Mahomes and everything else that goes in for it. So Chiefs number one for me in that division. Number two, I think I'll put the Chargers. I know Jim Harbaugh is coming in first year. Justin Herbert certainly is looking like he's going to have a better year this year. My only concern is really the who's around Justin Herbert. Who is he going to even be throwing the ball to? Most of the veteran guys left during the offseason, were traded away, honestly, and I don't know if you all remember, but the Chargers had like way too much money over the cap, so they had to cut it down. And so I still think the Chargers team is going to be potent. And I think they're going to be just kind of keeping up with the Chiefs. Not necessarily better than the Chiefs, but keeping up with them. Number three, I'm going to have the Raiders. Gardner Minshew, I've seen what he can do with the Colts. And the Raiders team has some players on it. Don't doubt Brock Bowers, the rookie tight end that, people seem to forget now that he's kind of on the Raiders. I think he's going to have a really good year this year. And Devontae Adams is there too. So that roster is talented. In a way, I think it's going to be a lot closer between the Chargers and the Raiders, I think, in regards to that battle, than a lot of people think. And you know what? Actually, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do Chiefs one. I'm going to do Raiders number two, because I think that defense also with Max Crosby and Christian Wilkins coming in, I think that can be potent. I think Chargers number three, mainly due to the fact that I just don't have trust in that wide receiver room. And the running back room's not great. Defense is iffy. And then Broncos, I put number four. Bro Nix is starting, so that's good. But, other than Bro Nix, we'll see what Sean Payton can throw together. But I still think they're also going to be sitting at four. That's going to be it. That's mine.
Wow. Okay, that's bold, Carson. That's really bold. I agree with you. Chiefs number one. You explained that really well. They're even better than they were last year. There's no reason to think they won't win this division again. Number two, man, that is wild to have a Gardner Minshew led Raiders team there.
Oh yeah.
You know what? I'll do you one better. I have the Broncos at number two in this
Oh,
division. Man,
whoa.
have so much faith in Bro Nix and Sean Payton together. I know they kind of got rid of all their best wide receivers, Jerry Jeudy, Tim Patrick, everyone outside of Cortland Sutton. But man, that dude was cooking in the preseason. Did you see him? Did you see Bro Nix?
I did. He was lighting it up.
Man, he is better than any quarterback in that division. Well, he's not better than any quarterback in the okay. I spoke way too out of turn there. He's better than Gardner Minshew. Let me say that much. He's better than Gardner Minshew, and I think he could be as good as Justin Herbert this year. I know that is a really bold take. Is Justin Herbert's like the chosen one? Everyone loves him. He's got all these advanced stats saying he's one of the best quarterbacks ever. I think Bro Nix is going to get in there and get the job done. And I think he will be the second best quarterback in the division this year. And I think that means the Broncos will be the second best team in the division this year, behind the Kansas City Chiefs. Then at number three, Carson, I'm sorry, but I got the Chargers. I got Justin Herbert. I mean, man, Harbaugh, Herbert, I know the wide receiver room's a little iffy, but there's some exciting young players there, I feel like if Quentin Johnston can learn how to catch a football, that'll be a pretty good team. I have faith he could learn to do that in an offseason. He was good at it in college, right? He just kind of forgot there for a year when he got to the NFL. Maybe he learned how to do it again. And if he did, watch out. Okay, that Chargers team is going to be something special. I think all three of those teams could make the playoffs in the AFC this year: Broncos, Chargers, and Chiefs. And then at number four, I got your Raiders, Carson. I'm sorry, I just don't have any faith at all in Gardner Minshew. I know you think he's a decent quarterback, but when I just look at him, I see average to below average. Man, behind that, did you see how awful he was in the he was outplayed by Aiden O'Connell in the preseason, man. I don't know how he got named the starter outside of the fact that maybe he has more experience with it. But if you're not playing as good as Aiden O'Connell, I'm sorry, you're not coming second in the division. You're not beating Bro Nix and Justin Herbert for that. No matter how stacked your defensive line or wide receiver room is, because I agree with you, their defensive line and their wide receiver room is really good. Um, yeah, Raiders number 4. So, Bro Nix and the Broncos, Carson. What do you think about that?
No, it's so gonna be Gardner Minshew and Devontae Adams. Like, can you I can already hear that going off. Oh, Gardner Minshew throws it. Adams, touchdown. And that's just gonna be it. That's just gonna be plain. Look, I love Bro Nix, and I love how, that's a Red Zone Rodeo exclusive term that we have begun, but I just don't have faith in anybody else on that roster offensively in terms of the Broncos. So I don't know. I think Raiders at number 2 is a lot more logical than Broncos at number 2, but we will see. We will see.
Carson, who played better in the preseason, Gardner Minshew or Bro Nix?
See, preseason only matters so far. It only goes so far in what it matters. Maybe Gardner Minshew, he was just like, you know what? It really doesn't matter. He didn't have Devontae Adams out there, for most of it. I don't know. I don't know. I saw what he did with a talented Colts team. And I think that's very similar with what the Raiders have in terms of some key positions, but those key positions only make him look better. So
The Colts saw what he did with a talented Colts team, and they decided they didn't want him anymore, man. I mean, that was a great roster, and he couldn't get them, to the playoffs even. So, to me, that is not good quarterback play. That's at best average, if not worse than that. I think the Raiders have a worse roster than the Colts do right now. Devontae Adams is better than any receiver on the Colts roster, but that's about it. That's like where the advantage ends. So I think the Raiders are going to be worse than the Colts were last year because they just have a worse team and the same quarterback the Colts did last year. So I really just don't see how the Raiders could do better than a third place finish at best. And that would take a lot of luck, in my opinion.
I guess we'll find out and see.
Yeah, we'll
have to
definitely find out.
say, all I have to say is look at the photo shoot that Gardner Minshew did with the Raiders. I mean, he encapsulated Las Vegas right there. And a man that can do that, he's already a champion. He believes it, so he's just going to go out on the field and do it. And also Patrick Mahomes, I'm pretty sure was the one that said, out of any teams in the West, the Raiders were the one that he thought was going to be the toughest for the Chiefs to play this year. So I think that goes a long way too in terms of a talented man like Patrick Mahomes. Don't bet against him saying who he thinks is going to be scary this season. And he said the Raiders. Who's leading the Raiders? Gardner Minshew.
I think that might be just a little biased because he's afraid of getting sacked by Max Crosby and Christian Wilkins the 2 times they play him. But
That's true. Yeah,
that's fair enough. That's fair
that's more
enough.
likely. I think the quarterback battle, Patrick Mahomes wins that all day, every day.
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, it's time to move over to the NFC now, huh?
It is.
We get to talk about my favorite division in all of sports, the NFC East. Oh, you already know who I have winning this division, Carson. It's
That's wrong.
the team from Texas, America's team, the Dallas Cowboys, right there at the number 1 spot, being the first team in 20 something years to repeat as NFC East champions. I mean, come on, you got Dak Prescott, top 2 quarterback, right? He was second in MVP votes last year. You got CeeDee Lamb, who arguably is the best receiver in football right now. Micah Parsons, arguably the best defensive player in football right now. You got 2 all-pro corners in the secondary. You got a revamped offensive line. You got a revamped linebacker core that, both filled with really young, exciting players that are probably going to do great this season. I don't see a weakness on this roster right now. Defensive tackle was a little concerning, but they went out and got Jordan Phillips and Linval Joseph. Edge rusher, it's a little concerning at depth right now because we lost Sam Williams, but they got Marshawn Neiland in the draft, and he's looked amazing in the preseason. So, and they got Carl Lawson too, the edge rusher who used to be a Bengal star and then went to the Jets and kind of flamed out a little bit. I just see a very, very talented team. I don't think anyone else in the NFC East has the firepower to match the Cowboys, so I have them at number one. Number two, I've got that yucky, yucky team from Philadelphia, the Eagles. Man, I know they got Saquon Barkley now, but Saquon is kind of washed, man. He's like, what, 28, 27, something like that. That's old for a running back. He's been slowing down every year since he's been drafted, just like Ezekiel Elliott did. And I know he's going to be running behind a really good offensive line this year, much better than anything he's had in the past. But, they just lost their best player in Jason Kelsey this offseason. So I'm not entirely sure that that offensive line will negate the effects of age. And I'd expect the Eagles' rushing attack to not be as efficient as it has been in years past because of that. Uh, I know they got Jalen Hurts, who was not really good the second half of last year. I mean, that whole team wasn't good the second half of last year. They haven't really done too much to change up the roster outside of adding an old running back. So, they do have some new coordinators, Kellen Moore. It'll be interesting to see what he does in Philadelphia. He was pretty good in Dallas, but, he got fired for a reason. So hopefully that reason shows its ugly head again in Philadelphia. They got a new defensive coordinator who I think is much better than who they had last year, so maybe they'll be better on that side of the ball as well too. But they're an incomplete team. They feel incomplete to me. They're unproven. How do we know which Jalen Hurts we're going to get? How do we know which Eagles offense and defense we're going to get? We really don't until the season starts. Maybe I'll be eating these words by the end of the year. But right now, putting the Eagles solidly at number two. Number three, I think, is a little tough. Giants and Commanders both have a lot of hope this season. They both have big questions at quarterback, but they have pretty good pieces around those quarterbacks. I'm going to put the Giants at number three. I think their offensive line is going to be much improved this year. I think their wide receiver room is much improved this year. I think Daniel Jones is not the best quarterback in the league. I don't think he's the best quarterback in the division. He might not even be the best quarterback on his team, Tommy DeVito. But I do think that he's good enough to win football games sometimes. And that's enough, I think, to put the Giants at number three. Number four, you have the Commanders. I do love Jaden Daniels, and I like Dan Quinn as a defensive coach, but as a head coach, don't really trust him so much. And I feel like they just have less talent overall than the Giants do on their roster. So I think while Jaden Daniels will play very well this year, I don't think they're going to win a lot of football games. So I have them at number four.
Yeah. I mean, solid list other than the team you put at number one. I think that the team that will be winning the NFC East this year is, in fact, the Philadelphia Eagles. I think that they have done so much more this offseason than the Cowboys have in terms of bettering that team. Now, granted, we saw them fall completely apart. And I think that's going to be one of those interesting things to see at the beginning of this year. What Eagle team shows up? Is it going to be the one that we saw that went undefeated for the majority of the season, or is it going to be the one that fell apart in the final, remaining weeks and into the playoffs? I think that's really going to be the question. But I think for me, thinking and seeing this division go forward, I do think the Eagles will clinch it. And I think it will the constant different winner every single year will prolong one more time as the Eagles will take it. Granted, number two, I would put the Cowboys. I just don't see the Giants or Commanders being anywhere close to the Cowboys in terms of rosters and how they can play. In terms of, I mean, just on paper, the Cowboys are just so much better than the Commanders and Giants. I will disagree with you, Rob, though. I do think the Commanders will have an edge over the Giants, putting them at 3, Giants at 4 for me, just based on the fact that I think Jaden Daniels is just a better quarterback than anybody the Giants have. And I think he'll be able to pull through and probably win a couple games more than the Giants with the problem of, okay, who's throwing these receivers the ball? I don't doubt Malik Neighbors is going to be a superstar, but I don't trust Danny Dimes throwing him the ball, or even Danny DeVito. I know they've both shown promise, but it's going to be tough, I think, offensively for the Giants to be able to do anything. Defensively, that might be a little different story. But I mean, the Commanders, they aren't like leaps and bounds ahead of the Giants in that regard either. I mean, I could see it going either way, just like you mentioned. But I think Jaden Daniels is going to have a really good year, his rookie season. Obviously, a learning curve there will be, but I think he'll be able to win games more so than the quarterback room for the Giants. And so I'll put the Commanders at 3, Giants at 4.
One point I do want to make about the Eagles, I forgot about this. They do have a brand new secondary, which should lead to them having a better defense overall. Uh, just because these players they drafted are really talented corners. But I will say, I think rookie corners struggle no matter how good they are, especially early on. So I wouldn't be surprised if that secondary, at least at the start of the season, was more of a weakness than a strength.
Mm.
Although I do believe that long term, these corners that Philadelphia drafted will be really good players, which upsets me to no end. But I can definitely see where you're coming from by saying they made their roster a lot better, and the Cowboys necessarily didn't. Uh, but at the same time, I think Dak is better than Jalen Hurts. I think CD is better than AJ Brown, and I think Mike is better than anyone on the Eagles defense. And you put all three of those guys together, they have the chance to win the division every year, no matter what the Eagles do. So maybe it's just a little bit of a Cowboys homerism, but they're going to win the division again this year.
I think Barkley's better than Zeke, though. So at least they got him in the running back area.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Zeke is not really anything outside of a fullback at this point. Rico Dowdle, on the other hand, I think he might be better than Saquon Barkley. So uh, we'll see what
I
happens
guess.
there.
Yeah, time will tell. Time will definitely tell.
Yeah.
Moving to the NFC North, Rob, and here we go. This is gonna be a tough one to put together, I think, too, because there's a lot of talented rosters in the North here too. But here we go. I will put, and I think that the Packers are going to win this division. I think they're going to be number one, and you know the youngness of the team, what they were able to accomplish last season. And I know, Rob, that's certainly still a sore subject for you when it came to the playoffs. But I think they're going to be even better this year, and I think that's going to be leaps and bounds and show. But I have coming up number 2, really close behind, is the Lions. I think the Lions are going to certainly be banging on that door all season long. I think it's going to be tough between the Packers and Lions who's going to take that division. But I will say ultimately will be Packers 1, Lions number 2. I'm going to say the Lions throw away their chance at getting number 1 because the coach goes for it on a 4th down and shouldn't have. That's what I'm going to say. That's what's going to happen. And oh, why am I blanking on his name?
Dan Campbell.
Dan Campbell. Man, I don't know why I was blanking on his name, but Dan Campbell, yeah, he's gonna throw it on 1/4 down that he shouldn't go for. That's what I'm calling it on right now. But it's gonna be close. But I do think Packers gonna take it. But both the Packers and Lions have really talented rosters, and certainly with those rosters they can go far. Coming in at 3, I do think that the Bears are going to have a successful season. Caleb Williams is obviously going to have some growing pains, I believe. But Caleb Williams is also lucky, like AR-15, that he has players around him that are really, really talented, so that can help his growth in the NFL, especially coming in as a young player. So I think that's certainly going to benefit the Bears, but I don't think it's going to be enough for them to challenge the Lions or the Packers in terms of those higher spots in the division. And last, I will have the Vikings. And that's not to say that the Vikings are a horrible team. I think their defense is going to be spectacular. I just have very little faith in Sam Darnold, despite having the fact that Justin Jefferson is on that roster. I think the Vikings are going to surprise some people based on what Justin Jefferson can do. And what the defense can accomplish. But I think just overall, and when it comes to the wins and losses and keeping up with those other teams in the division, I think it's going to be tough.
Yeah, I think I disagree very strongly with who you have winning that division. In my book, I think the Lions are going to win it all again. I just think they have a very complete roster that they only made more complete with the additions they had to their defense this year. I think full year of Jameson Williams being in borderline wide receiver 1 form opposite Amon-Ra St. Brown will really do some things for this Lions offense. Jahmyr Gibbs and Sam Laporta, two amazing rookies they got last year, will only be better this year. Uh, I don't see the Lions doing anything but repeating as the victors of this division because they've only gotten better. Number 2, I actually have the, Chicago Bears.
Hmm.
I think, Caleb Williams is a really special player, and I think they put an amazing team around him. I know he's a rookie quarterback, but I think any quarterback coming in with that level of talent around them, just like we were talking about with, the Colts and their stacked roster, is capable of winning at least 9 or 10 games. And, Caleb Williams is not just any quarterback. If he can flash that specialness that, he had all of college, I think this is a team that could very seriously contend not just in the playoffs, but for Super Bowl. So I wouldn't be surprised if they gave the Lions a real run for their money for that number 1 spot. But ultimately, I think they come at number 2. Number 3, I still think they'll have a winning season, but I expect the Packers to be a worse team this year. I think Jordan Love is going to regress. It happens to a lot of quarterbacks that sophomore slump, and to me, it's just hard to see him being better this year than he was last year, or even being as good as he was last year. Just because teams will have tape on him, they'll be able to figure him out a little bit. And I think that's where that sophomore slump will really start to come in for him. And I also think the Packers wide receiver room, as much as they destroyed my Cowboys secondary in the playoffs last year, I think it's a little overrated just because of the one sample season that we have, and they'll also kind of crash back to reality this coming season. But they still have a very good roster overall, and I still expect them to have a winning record, just not as good as the Bears or the Lions. And then at number 4, totally agree with everything you said about the Vikings. They have some really, really talented players at wide receiver and defensive line and all that sort of stuff. But Sam Darnold, the quarterback, is kind of concerning, especially since every time he's ever been a starter, it's never really turned out that well. So unless he takes a big step forward this season, I think the Vikings are pretty solidly cemented at that number 4 spot.
Yeah. Yeah. No, interesting. We'll see how that one plays out too. A little bit of shakeup there. But I will say, just to echo your point again, I think the Lions are going to be a really talented team this year too. I think the Packers are going to surprise a lot of people too with how good they can be. Because I think they're only going to take that next step forward rather than regressing, like you mentioned. I believe they'll step right on up and be able to carry on with what they were doing. So, but we'll see. We'll see who wins that division. We'll see how it all plays out. Moving on to the South, Rob. How do you think it's going to shape out in the NFC?
That's another tough one. I think at number 1, I have the Atlanta Falcons. Kirk Cousins, Kyle Pitts, Bijan Robinson. That's a really good offense. I know they made the bizarre pick in the first round that we've talked about a lot, Michael Penix Jr., just to sit on the bench for a little while. But, that's a really talented roster. I think their defense got better this offseason. It was pretty bad last year. So I think they added some pieces to that defensive line, which desperately was needed. I have faith in that new coach they've got. I think this is a team that could definitely put it all together and be a serious playoff contender with all the talent they've got on both sides of the ball. Probably for the first time, since 2016. Second place, I have the Saints. I think they just have a really talented roster. Chris Olave is a great wide receiver. They're kind of limited by their quarterback, uh, but with the amount of talent they have on both sides, I feel like they're probably going to end up somewhere around 500. Then I have the Buccaneers at number 3. Uh, they do have some good talent. They have really great wide receivers. They have a really good defensive line. Their whole defense, honestly, is really good. I just personally don't have a lot of faith in Baker Mayfield. I know he was pretty good at the end of last year, but that's kind of like been his thing, his inconsistency, right? He'll be really good for a stretch and then really bad for a stretch. And right now it seems like he's due to be really bad. So maybe he'll shut me up, make me eat my words, and be really good this season. And if he is, then I think maybe the Buccaneers could rival the Falcons for that number 1 spot. And then at number 4, just the disaster team that is, failing in every possible way. The Carolina Panthers, man, what are they doing? I don't know, but they're losing the division. That's what they're doing. They're coming in at number 4 on this list. So, yeah, that's the way I have it stacked up, Carson.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with you where the number 4 spot is, the Carolina Panthers. That certainly is they've cemented themselves there. Number 1 though, I'm gonna say the Buccaneers. I think they're gonna continue in their upward trajectory. I know Mike Evans and Chris Godwin are certainly a little bit older now, receiver wise. But I do think that Baker Mayfield has kind of found his team. Too many decent quarterbacks have gone to the Browns and have not amounted to anything. And the Browns have really kind of destroyed their careers in a way. And so, and then Baker Mayfield bounced around the league. We saw what he was able to do in that one game when he was, I believe, playing for the Rams. And that was kind of a spectacular, like, oh, like maybe this guy still has it. And I think it was really that showed, the Buccaneers that, okay, let's try to bring this guy in. Let's see if he can compete for the starting role with Kyle Trask, and let's see what can happen. And I think they got it right because it seems like he has fit into this play scheme, fit into this team a lot better than he even has in the past, even with the Browns, even rivaling that time. And so I think this is like his time that he's taken to shine. I kind of view like Baker Mayfield in a way with Kirk Cousins, who's now sharing the division, because like Kirk Cousins started with the Redskins at the time, and he was okay, he was decent, he ended up getting traded away, and then his career started to get better when he finally was with the Vikings, was kind of generating that success, that confidence. And so I kind of see the same thing with Baker Mayfield here. So, and as you mentioned, that defense is still really good, even when Tom Brady was still on that roster, because Brady loves teams with really good defenses, helps them win championships. And so that defense is still there and still good for the most part. So I have the Bucs winning that division. Close second, though, is the Falcons. I think a lot of people probably have the Falcons winning this division with all the offseason moves that they've made. I think Bijan Robinson is going to have a breakout season. I'm interested to see which Kirk Cousins we see just coming back from injury. Maybe that was one of the reasons why they took Penix Jr. I think we've even discussed this on the podcast before. Maybe that was one of the things they were even thinking about. But I do think this Falcons team is going to be a whole lot better than it was last year, just even on both sides of the ball. And I really expect the battle between the Buccaneers and Falcons to be close for that number one. But I believe Buccaneers will take one, Falcons will take two, Saints will drop to number three. I feel like they have a lot of questions they need to answer, and they got a lot of things they need to show me coming from last season, to really solidify themselves even higher in that division. And then, as we mentioned before, Carolina's last.
Yeah, I think I understand your reasoning on all of those teams. So I wouldn't be surprised if it played out either way that we've described here, especially if Baker Mayfield ends up being good this season. Then I think I would tend to agree with the way you just described it. Finally, though, I think we have a division that's nowhere near as clear cut and dry, the NFC West. Oh man, Carson, how are you stacking these teams up?
So first off, we're gonna have the Arizona Cardinals, number one. Kidding. No, that's not gonna be my official locked in. Sorry, Cardinals fans. Yeah, you're coming in number four, but we'll get to you in a second. Number one, this is gonna be tough, I think, for me, because I really think the battle is going to be between the Rams and the 49ers for this division. And I think either way you go with it is a pretty good pick. However, I'm going to still put the 49ers as one, just based on the success they had last season. I understand that, Brock Purdy seems to have regressed a little bit in preseason, but again, I take preseason with a grain of salt in regards to some of the times the players and what they're doing in those games are, because they're not playing to the schemes. They don't want to show their hands before the season. So there's a lot of different reasons why they might not look top notch, like they have been. I just think the 49ers are still that dominant team. They have a lot of those same players. I know there was certainly question marks in regards to Brandon Ayuk and what's going to happen. Trent Williams, with those contract talks. Now they've gotten them back in the building. They're going to be playing. Talk about a team that has a lot of weapons on it, both sides of the ball. I just still think the 49ers are going to be that top team. Knocking on their door, though, is going to be the Rams. And, as I mentioned before, I can see them stealing the division away from the 49ers if it came to that, too. I think the Rams have made a bunch of great additions, and in terms of coming into this season. They played really well at the end of last season, going in the playoffs, close game against the Lions. initially that would knock them out, but they started to get things going then. And I think that momentum, even though they would lose in the playoffs, I think that momentum is going to carry over into this season. Really good players coming back. Puka Nakua, Kyron Williams, I think they're going to make this offense dynamic. I mean, Matthew Stafford, he's a veteran, so he knows what he's doing in the pocket, and I think that just brings some veteran leadership to the room as well, like it has done in the past. Seahawks, I have some question marks in regards to it. It seems like they're trying to figure out which direction they want to move in, but their roster is more talented, um, more so than Arizona. So we'll see what Geno Smith can do. 2 years ago, Geno Smith was amazing. Last year, Geno Smith was not great. So we'll see what Geno Smith can do. He certainly has the players around him. DK Metcalf, Jackson Smith, Najigba, like talented players that can do a lot on the offensive side of the ball. I just don't know if that's going to be enough to keep up with the Rams and 49ers in this division. And last is the Cardinals. Really, when I look at that roster, all I see in terms of talent is Marvin Harrison Jr. And, that's, I think, it. That's how I would put it. So, it's just not really that great. Seems like the Cardinals are going to have a more of a rebuilding year, try to turn things around for next season. That's how I'm going to have it.
I agree with most of what you said, but I think the Rams are going to win this division. I think they have the best quarterback in the division. I think they have the best wide receiver duo in the division. Let me tell you why. I think, Brandon Ayuk's still really good. Debo, not so good. He wasn't great last year. I think he's going to only be worse this year. I really like Ricky Pearsall, the receiver they drafted, but he was just shot in the chest a couple days ago.
Yep.
So who knows when he's going to start playing? And even if he does, who knows how good he'll be in the NFL? I certainly don't think he'll be at like a Puka Nakua level or a Cooper Cup level. So I definitely give the Rams the advantage there. I think the Rams have a better defensive line. Kobe Turner, really exciting. Byron Murphy, really exciting. Two guys they drafted last year. They also drafted two defensive linemen really highly this year, who are both really talented dudes that I expect to absolutely. The J got Jared Verse somehow. I didn't think he'd fall that far. They also drafted a defensive tackle. I'm blanking on the name of who I think next to Kobe Turner will be really presenting some problems to opposing offenses. I don't really believe in Brock Purdy. I think the Brock stock is falling because he was really bad in preseason, in training camp. And I think his, reason for being drafted as Mr. Irrelevant is finally starting to show. Because once people start to press that Shanahan system and he's not surrounded by the most elite talent ever to walk the earth, he's exposed as what he is, a seventh round pick. And I think, although the Niners are returning pretty much everyone important from last year on the offensive side of the ball, Trent Williams is another year older. Christian McCaffrey is another year older. Debo is going to be kind of washed this year. Brandon Ayuk, he was holding out for so long. Who knows how that'll impact his play? I think you'll start to see seventh round Mr. Irrelevant Brock Purdy come out and, Pro Bowl Brock Purdy go away, hopefully for good. Don't want to let my Cowboys bias out too much there. But, they're still a super stacked team. I still think they're going to be winning a ton of games this year, and I still think they'll be in the playoffs. But I have the Rams ahead of them at number one. Outside of that, I agree with everything you said, though.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing too. Like I love this Rams team. I really do. Like I think it is one of the better ones we've seen in a long time that the Rams can produce and put out there. And I'm super excited to see what they can do this season. And that's what like it was so tough for me to like deciding on who do I want to put first and second. And so I could, as I mentioned, I could see the Rams taking the division, 49ers coming second, just as much as I can say the 49ers are going to get first and Rams second. So it's going to be super interesting to see how it all plays out. Yeah, I think those are really the two teams, though, in terms of the division. I know some people are started to talk about, oh, the Seahawks, they might make a splash, but I don't know. I just don't believe in Geno Smith. So,
Yeah, I don't either. They have a great roster. It's like we were talking about before with, if the Dolphins had Josh Allen, they'd be winning a Super Bowl every year. I think if, the Seahawks had Matt Stafford, they'd be winning the Super Bowl every year. They got great wide receivers, great defense. They just really need some help at the quarterback spot right now.
yeah, absolutely. Well, guys, that is going to be our division predictions in regards to the upcoming season. As we mentioned before, let us know what you think. If you agree, disagree with us, let us know. Would love to continue on the conversation. But we will certainly have much more fun with this as we see it all start to play out in the next number of weeks, next number of months. And then by the end of the season, we'll see how close we were or how far we were. Probably more the latter than it is the former, but we'll see. Nonetheless. But anyways, we're gonna move into our final segment of the night, guys, and getting ready for week one. We're gonna make this more of a constant in regards to our shows we're gonna put on every week, just because I think that picking games is really interesting and super fun to do, and may give even some more clarity on how we feel about these teams matching on up. Now, we're not going to pick every single game. We're going to end up selecting a various few. The games that we think are going to be, I mean, not only necessarily the primetime matchups, but the games that we think are going to be very interesting, games that we think might be flying under the radar in regards to, hey, if you got the time, tune into this game because it's probably going to be a good one. So we're going to be breaking those down and giving you our predictions. On top of that, though, Rob and we are going to have a little competition to see how many we can get right and wrong. And so by the end of the season, we'll see who ends up winning that, and maybe we'll do a fun, friendly little bet on to see whoever wins gets to have some sort of victory. We haven't decided what that might be. Hey, if you have any suggestions, maybe put those down in the comments, and maybe we'll give them a listen, give them a thought. But we're going to continue to tally those up too, just kind of add to that fun element. And as always, continue to comment down in the selection below, so we know what you think, who you think are going to be taking these wins, who's going to be losing in these games. But anyways, without further ado, I think the first game that we need to talk about is the one that's going to be coming up Thursday night, and I think it's a big one. And I think it's one that both you and I, Rob, are probably super looking forward to seeing. I know for me, this is going to be the highlight probably of the week before my Titans play on Sunday. The Ravens Chiefs. Rob, what do you think? How is this going to turn on out? Who are you picking to win?
I got the Ravens winning. I don't think they're necessarily a better team than the Chiefs. The Chiefs are really mid during the regular season. I mean, last year they really struggled throughout the regular season. A lot of emphasis on regular season because once the playoffs come, they lock in and like the best team ever. Uh, You know, they lost their week one opener last year to the Detroit Lions, who, granted, were a very good team. The Ravens are a very good team too. It's almost like they're just so good in the playoffs. They're like, regular season doesn't really matter. Like, we don't really even have to try that hard. And they just kind of, let some teams beat them, let some teams lose to them. It doesn't really matter because they're going to be in the playoffs and win the Super Bowl anyway. So I think this is one of those games where the Ravens are probably going to come out and beat the Chiefs just because the Chiefs aren't, doing as well in the regular season as they can for some reason, whatever that reason is. And then, if they meet in the playoffs, I'm sure the Chiefs would destroy the Ravens. But for this particular matchup, I'm taking the Ravens over the Chiefs.
Well, Rob, we've come to our first disagreement of the season. I'm not betting against Patrick Mahomes. I've done so much in the past, and I'm not doing it again. Patrick Mahomes all the way. He's taking the Chiefs to a victory over the Ravens on Thursday night. It's going to happen. Andy Reid, a legendary coach, Travis Kelce. I hope this season there's less Taylor Swift hype. Really keep my fingers crossed with that.
Me too.
Probably not, though. Unfortunately, I think the Swifties will be out in numbers when it comes to the Chiefs. So tragedy there. So we're just gonna have to block that out. And so, but I'm gonna say Chiefs are gonna win this game. I think it's gonna be close. I think it's gonna be a really great game. But I'm gonna have the Chiefs taking the W here. Moving on to Friday night, Rob. Here we go. Packers Eagles in Brazil, neutral site. Who are you taking?
Taking the Packers, I think the Eagles are going to look a lot this year like they did the second half of last year, even though I know they've made a ton of changes. And I think the Packers were a good team last year. I know they will be a little worse this year, but I still think overall they have a better quarterback. They have better wide receivers, and overall they'll play better and defeat an Eagles team that's still trying to figure itself out a little bit.
I absolutely agree. I'm taking Packers here. Packers with the W. We agreed. First time, Rob. Here we go. First time of the season of our
Trivia night.
picks. I know. All right, now we're moving into the Sunday day matchups. Not the prime time evening game yet. We'll get to that one, as that's going to be another fun one. But one game that might be flying a little bit under the radar for you all, unless you all are Atlanta or Steelers fans. But we think that this matchup is going to be certainly one to definitely pay attention to, definitely one to tune in if you have the time, if you want to. It's the Falcons Steelers. And Rob, who do you think is going to be taking this one?
I have the Falcons winning this one, but barely. I think they have the better quarterback. I don't think the Steelers have anyone anywhere near as good as Kirk. But I think these are two really talented rosters going up against each other in the first week of the season. Going to be a really exciting game.
I agree. Once again, Falcons, I think, are going to take this W. I just am not. I'm not confident in Mike Tomlin, and I'm not confident in Russell Wilson. And I think Kirk Cousins and this Falcons team is going to really be firing on all cylinders coming out week one. I think Bijan Robinson is looking for a better second season, second season, not third, second season. And, I think they're just going to be driving it right down the Steelers' throats. So we'll see what TJ Watt can do to stop them. But I think the Falcons will be winning this one. Then, next matchup, the one that I'm probably looking the most forward to is my Titans playing the Chicago Bears in the Windy City. But that's okay because the Titans are coming out with a W. What do you think, Rob? You're going to break my heart.
I'm going to break your heart. I'm sorry, but I think the Bears just have more talent across the board, including at the quarterback position. So I think they win this game, and I don't think it'll be close either. I'm sorry, Carson.
How dare you say that? How you think Caleb Williams is a better quarterback than Will Levis?
Absolutely.
Blasphemy. Blasphemy.
Maybe we'll have a bet on that too.
uh no, I have all the utmost faith in my Titans winning against the Bears. I think this is going to be one of those games where, week one, they're going to come out and they're going to just kind of surprise the world a little bit in regards to what the Titans can do and can accomplish. We have yet to see if that's going to happen, but I believe it will. And that's why I'm thinking the Titans will be taking this one. I think Caleb Williams will have some learning curves. And I think Jeffrey Simmons and Trevondre Sweat is going to be in his face all game long. And so I think that's going to only help the Titans end up getting the win over the Bears. But we'll see. We'll see. I'm saying getting the Titans W here for week one. One of the next matchups that I think is going to be also really, really good is kind of a rematch of, the last season game where the Texans eliminated the Colts from playoff contention. And I think this game is going to be even more heated, if not better. And so you have it's not Titans, the Texans taking on the Colts. Titans will take on the Colts a lot later, but that's fine. We'll get to that at another time. But the Texans Colts, I think this is going to be a really good game to see CJ Stroud coming on out for year two. Anthony Richardson coming on out year two. Two sophomore kind of quarterbacks. One obviously having a lot more experience and talent that we've seen. One that's wanting to come on out to prove a lot more that he hasn't yet. And both of these teams, both of these rosters are really, really well put together to succeed, and defenses too. So I think this is going to be one of the top matchups too. And I would even think this game should be a primetime game if there was another primetime slot, because the primetime games are good this week one. But if you can get the Texans Colts and watch in for this game, certainly going to be a good one. I'm saying Colts are going to win this game. I'm taking the Colts.
I agree with you, Carson. I think they're going to come out and get revenge for that, essentially what was a playoff game last year at the end of the regular season there. And I think they're going to shock the world by beating the Texans I think it's going to be a small margin, but I think they're going to come out and do it. So,
yeah, I agree. Rob, here we go.
Here we
It's
go.
week one with your Cowboys. What are you thinking?
Yeah. Man, Browns have a great roster. They have a great defense. They're loaded at wide receiver. They're good at offensive line. They're good at running back, although Nick Chubb will not be playing in this season opener. But they don't have a quarterback. Cowboys do. The Cowboys have the second MVP vote getter at quarterback. The Cowboys have a better wide receiver on their team than any of the ones the Browns have in CeeDee Lamb. And Myles Garrett and Micah Parsons, they're probably like, pretty close. You could probably say one's better than the other, but it doesn't really matter which. They're both like, the best defensive edges in the league. Uh, but I think that quarterback and wide receiver connection that the Cowboys have is better than anything Cleveland has. And I think that's where the game is going to be won. I think Dak Prescott to CeeDee Lamb is going to seal a week one victory for the Cowboys, although I think it will be a close game.
Yep, I'm agreeing with you right there. Pretty much everything you said is what I would have gone down to because you check the lists on where those key matchups will be, where the battle will be, and I agree up to everything you said. Pretty much saying the fact that Dak Prescott is the quarterback, and you're looking at that battle when it regards to or when it comes to Deshaun Watson, and there really isn't a comparison right now. Now Deshaun Watson that played for the Texans years ago, that's a better story, but we haven't seen that Deshaun Watson. And so and CeeDee Lamb certainly is one of the best durable receivers that are out there. I don't know how, Deshaun Watson's going to be able to connect with Jerry Jeudy, who's now a new addition, Amari Cooper, certainly talented wide receivers, but I don't think at the same level when it comes to CeeDee Lamb. So I think it's going to be a close game. I think it's going to be really good, but I do think the Cowboys will step away with the win here. Yeah.
Thank you, Carson.
You know what? Just you couldn't do the same for my Titans. It's fine. I'll remember this. I'll remember this. Don't worry. Don't worry. Don't worry. I thought about throwing my lot in with the Browns just to spite you. Just to spite you putting them last in the division predictions. But it's fine. You know what? I'll be the bigger man. I'm gonna just let that one go. I won't. It'll just be eating away at me later tonight. But it's fine. I'll get my revenge one day or another. But moving on to Sunday night. Sunday night, we have a great, fantastic matchup. And other than the Ravens Chiefs on Thursday night, I will have to say this is probably the second most outside, I guess, the Ravens Chiefs, Titans Bears, probably second or third most game I'm really excited for because we already got a sneak peek of it last playoffs. And it was a great game down to the wire, Lions Rams. And we have a week one matchup, and I think it's going to be just as good, if not better. I'm going to be picking the Rams on this one. I think the Rams are going to take the cake, and I think Dan Campbell is going to do one of those fourth down plays, and it's not going to work, and that's how the Lions are going to lose it. But I think it's going to be close, right down to the wire. This is going to be amazing. Week one is everything it will be, and more. It's just going to be so exciting. But I'm taking the Rams here over the Lions.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything you just said. I think it'll go right down to the wire. I think it'll be one of the best games of the season right off the bat. And I think the Rams will come back to get revenge for their playoff loss last season.
So you're taking the Rams too?
Yep.
There we go. There we go. And the last one that we're going to be doing for our picks of the week is going to be the Monday night primetime game. Jets 49ers. Rob, who are you taking? Who are you picking for this one?
I'm taking the Jets, Carson. I think Aaron Rodgers is going to stay healthy. God, this is so bad. This is so bad for me as a Cowboys fan picking between Aaron Rodgers or the 49ers. This is like, oh my God. But I think the Jets have a better roster than the Niners do. I like their wide receivers better. I like their offensive line better. I think their defense is better. And Aaron Rodgers, even at 40 years old with a torn ACL or coming off a torn ACL, I should say, I think is a better quarterback than Brock Purdy ever will be. I think Breece Hall is going to give Christian McCaffrey a run for his money as one of the best running backs in the league this year. Uh, I think the Niners are good, but I think with the regression I'm expecting from Brock Purdy, the Jets will be better. And I think the Jets are going to win this game.
You know what, Rob? I'm going to absolutely agree with you. I do think that the Jets are going to be taking this one as well. I might be eating my words. We might be eating our words here when it comes to it, because we have certainly seen, I have certainly seen Brock Purdy turn things magically into touchdowns and turn games around. And, I don't like to discredit talented players. And, I know you spoke a little bit that you think Deebo Samuel is just not him. I think he's still got it. I think Brandon Ayuk still got it. I think Christian McCaffrey still has it. George Kittle, there's superstars on that 49ers team. But there is also those superstars on the Jets team, and they may not be some of the larger names based on the fact that they're just younger players. Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson, Aaron Rodgers is probably going to be in there for more than one drive, hopefully, for Jets fans. So, having that competency at quarterback is going to be key, I think, for this Jets team's success this year. Because, I mean, we saw what happened last year when it came down to Zach Wilson and, others that were trying to step on in, and it just didn't go well. So, as long as Aaron Rodgers can stay upright, as long as he can stay healthy, he certainly has the talent. And that's really pains me to say it too, because I am not an Aaron Rodgers fan one bit. But I do think the Jets are going to take this one. And I think they're going to surprise a lot of the world, because I think a lot of people are having the 49ers closing this one out.
Yeah. I hope that they beat the 49ers. As much as it pains me to say I hope Aaron Rodgers wins a football game, the Niners have been more of a threat to us in recent years than Aaron Rodgers has. So,
yeah. It's good game, though. We have some really awesome week 1 matchups, especially in the primetime slot. And I know the NFL can certainly make that a lot easier at the beginning of the season than when it cuts to later in the season. But really some amazing games. Super looking forward to week 1. Hopefully you all are too. And it's going to be interesting to see how these teams start to shake out. Obviously it's week 1. Plenty more weeks of football left to go after it, but sometimes we can already start to catch glimpses of things down the road. So going to be fun coming on back next week, talking with you all, breaking down week 1, going with our next picks, and just talking football and building this community. So Rob, is there anything else?
Just, football's back, baby. Let's go. It's time. We finally made it back to football season, and I am just beyond excited.
I share that enthusiasm, Rob. I am so happy it's back, especially NFL. Love the UFL, but the NFL is just something else. It's good to have fall football back. It's good. The weather's getting cooler. Hoodie weather's coming, folks. All the pumpkin flavored stuff is out. Fall is amazing. And then you have football on top of it. So it's just like, it's a win-win-win. Check off all those boxes as you go down the list. It's good to have week 1 finally here. And it's not, it's a couple weeks away. It's here. It's tomorrow. It's 2 days. Oh, crazy. But absolutely. Well, guys, we're going to wrap up this episode. And thank you all for watching. Thank you all for listening. Please consider subscribing, liking, sharing with your friends. Our main goal here at the Red Zone Rodeo Podcast, as we've mentioned before, is to build this community, build a community of like-minded individuals who love football, who love to talk football. And, that's our goal with trying to put all this forward and continue to help us all grow by playing all your all's little part. And so we thank you all. Thank you all for the support. Looking forward to seeing you all next week. And have fun watching these games. I know Rob and I will.
Absolutely. Go Cowboys.
Titans coming out on top this week, boys. All right. Well, anyways, we're going to sign off. We'll catch you next week. Have a great time. And until next time, signing off. See ya.